Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 115 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So whatever you believe, you know that death is a certainty, whether it's the death of someone you love or the death of your identity. That grief that comes with loss is inescapable. So what do you do when this happens, and how do you actually process these life changes? Today we will examine how to live our lives and how to chart a path forward through grief. So this is a bit of a harder podcast episode, I think, because the topic is kind of sad sometimes, or it feels like the sense of heaviness, but I know it's important. And death has been one of my own greatest teachers. I often get the question, how did you become a coach, or how did this end up happening for you, or why did you choose coaching? And I know that I wouldn't have started coaching if it wasn't for the deaths of people in my life. Death has changed how I parent, how I work, and how I live my life every single day. And one of the biggest lessons I learned about death was that it can feel like such a paradox, such a surprising thing for something we know will happen with certainty. We spend so very little time examining its implications. We will plan more for births often than we do for deaths, and it feels easier to talk about what's coming when it's about a newer life than a life that feels that it's close to an end. So why do we still feel so surprised by the grief and the emotions that accompany death when we know it will happen? And my own observation is that our expectations of what we think will occur when an event happens is often very different from the reality. We tend to simplify, we make things very vague, it's all in our head and not in our heart when it's in the future. And when reality hits, it is much more difficult, complicated, and convoluted. And it is much more specific. There are details you never thought you would have to think through. And it's also much more in our heart. So if you're someone that feels that you think a lot about things, you're planning a lot, you're likely very rational, and you're in your head a lot, death takes us by surprise because it's such an emotional event. We're used to kind of using our head to be able to get through things. But there are times in our life when only the heart will suffice, when we have to let things come in and allow the pain to affect us. And so this mirrors how we react to any kind of change. How easily we can accept change will determine how long it takes for us to process all of these emotions related to this big change in our lives. So everyone has a different tolerance level of acceptance based on their prior experiences. So my grandmother's death was less destructive than the sudden death of my father. And even though I knew that was the case, I expected it to be less disruptive, I still grieved my grandmother's death. I was still surprised, though, at how grief could still have an impact, even though I rationally knew that she was 96 years old, she's had an amazing life, very high quality physically, was still mentally sound, and I knew she was closer to death. But I was still caught off guard in those first couple of years after her death by waves of sadness that would come through when I thought about how much I missed her. Yet, if it weren't for these deaths and others as well, I wouldn't have the appreciation that I have for the life I have today. And it provides a great amount of perspective to be able to consider whether or not you would live the life you are living today if you were going to die tomorrow. My relationships have benefited so much from this approach. Why? Because I will often think to myself, if this were the last conversation that I were to have with this person, would I want this to be it? And the perspective that we gain from this type of reflection is really important, because we often treat our life, our time, our relationships as if we were going to live forever. And that's okay, because I would say that, when you're going after your dreams, I want you to have that patience as if you were going to live forever, that you were going to enjoy this process forever. But I also want to encourage you to live as if you were going to die today. Because what ends up happening is you end up asking yourself, would I want to do the work that I'm doing now? I knew that I only had a year left of my life. And if the answer is no, again and again and again and again and again, then it is time to reevaluate. And it's time to ask yourself, well, what has to change then? And there's no right way to lead yourself through grief. Grief is going to look very different for each person. The amount of time it takes for you to process loss, frustration, shock, denial, anger, or even deep sadness is going to be different each time from person to person. You might not even feel all of these emotions. What can be helpful, however, is for you to maintain good habits. Habits such as talking to someone about what you're feeling and experiencing. When we're able to name and label emotions, it helps us process them more. It helps us start to articulate and realize what is happening so that our body and our brain understands what we're going through. Another good habit could be taking a break from thinking about the topic all day, every day. Sometimes we feel we must be sad or upset or in this cycle of thinking about it constantly in order for us to really appropriately grieve the person or mourn the person or grieve the situation or mourn the situation or do it justice. But taking a break can be very helpful for us to regain some energy and allow ourselves then to come back to the things we need to handle, the things we need to do with a different sense of focus. Another great habit is to just move your body every day. When you are moving, you are able to bolster your energy levels. You are maintaining and improving your mental health as well. And then another great habit is to allow yourself to feel your emotions. The more we resist the emotion, the more we try to just power through day to day, the longer it takes for us to move past the blame, past the denial, past the anger or the sadness, and then into acceptance and a new way of living. I remember when my father passed, I had started working at McKinsey shortly after. They had asked if I wanted to take additional time, and I was like, no. I had time. I will tell you that it wasn't that it was immediately after. I had some time, and they had asked, do I want more? I wasn't going to start for a while, so I was like, no, it's fine. I can do this. I'm here. But what I would find is during the day, I wouldn't think about it except at specific moments. Maybe there was a trigger. Maybe I called my mom and I got my dad's voicemail because she started using his cell phone and I heard his voice, right? And then it brought me back to that feeling of sadness. Or it would be in the evenings where I would be asleep and then I would maybe be trying to fall asleep, but then maybe I was in a different spot, or when you're traveling so much, I would be a little bit restless and suddenly, pangs of grief would come through. And I find that when I was distracted, it didn't hit as often. Find out for yourself if you are distracting yourself away from your emotions and not actually feeling them. Because it was actually very healing. Obviously, it felt very sad and the emotions were strong, but it allowed me to realize that there was sadness, that there were emotions, that this was just part of the process as well. And it allows us then to say, okay, this is sad. I did feel these things. And then I'm able to say, and now what? How do I want to move forward? Or what do I feel right now? Right now I feel okay. When we're in that place of creating new experiences in the day-to-day, and we still have the tie-in to the past, the ability for us to be able to feel that transition is what allows us to say, okay, this ended, and now there is a new beginning, and there is a transition. And a transition only starts when we accept it inside of us. One more good habit I want to recommend is to journal on your experience. Write about what's going on, how you're feeling, because it also allows us to process and articulate maybe not even what we're thinking consciously, but what we're feeling subconsciously as well. So you can lead yourself through grief, but it will not be a linear process. You will feel like you've moved through your emotion only to feel it again. And the difference might be in the severity of your emotions, how long you feel them, and the impact it has on your life. And instead of hoping for an end to these feelings of loss, you can give yourself an alternate path. You can allow yourself to be inspired by death. No amount of suffering brings back the person. It doesn't return the situation to the way things were. No escape or distraction is going to remove that human experience of feeling grief or sadness forever. And if this is the case, we might as well see death as that reminder that we might as well love, we might as well live, we might as well give of ourselves here and now. And just because we are experiencing sadness now, it doesn't mean it will always feel that way. We will move into that next day, that next moment, that next breath with this feeling of newness, and then we will forget what that pain felt like. And instead of creating memories of loss only at the end of a person's life, let's create memories of what transpired next and have that be what's happening at the end of a person's life or at the end of an event. We can give meaning and we can create a narrative from death that is about the change, that is about the inspiration that came next and after. So that is why I always talk about death in a more positive way. If it weren't for all of these deaths that I experienced, I don't know that I would have gone into coaching with that same intensity and that fervor of this must happen, that I must figure this out, that I must live my life in this way, and I must find my calling. And so even though it was so painful, and it's not that I wish it were to happen again, I know that my own narrative has become a story that encourages me to show up much more courageously, much more fearlessly, to love people better, more in this life right here, right now, because it is short. So I will end with the words of Rumi, which I love, and this phrase, I think, and this quote hopefully will inspire you the way it has inspired me, which is this: the wound is where the light shines through. So let all the light in, let all of the grief in, and your life will be much richer for it. So if you want to become the person who does start to live their life as the person who knows their life is short, I encourage you to reach out at www.mayempson.com/contact to schedule a consultation. Life is happening already right now in front of our eyes, and you might as well take that next step to becoming more you, to learning who you are, what you want to do with your life, to reinvent the life you currently have and step more into a life that you desire. I love you and have an amazing one. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmpson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayamson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.